The crystal chandelier cast prismatic light across the ballroom of the Harbor Club, where 200 guests had gathered to celebrate my parents' 30th wedding anniversary. I stood near the back, nursing a glass of champagne and wondering why I'd bothered to come at all. The answer was simple: hope. Despite 31 years of evidence to the contrary, I still harbored the foolish belief that someday my parents might see me as something other than their greatest disappointment. Ladies and gentlemen, Dad's voice boomed through the microphone as he took the stage, resplendent in his custom tuxedo. At 58, Robert Morrison still commanded a room with the ease of someone accustomed to being the center of attention. Thank you all for joining Margaret and me as we celebrate 3 decades of marriage. Applause rippled through the crowd. I recognized most of the faces: partners from Dad's law firm, board members from Mom's various charitable organizations, neighbors from our exclusive Connecticut suburb, family friends who'd watched me grow up and fail to live up to expectations. 30 years ago, Dad continued, his arm around Mom's waist, I married the most beautiful, intelligent, accomplished woman I'd ever met. Margaret has been my partner in everything, in building our law practice, in raising our children, in creating the life we'd always dreamed of. Mom beamed beside him in her designer gown, the picture of elegance and success. They made a stunning couple, the kind of power duo that graced magazine covers and charity auction programs. We've been blessed with 2 wonderful children, Dad said, and my stomach clenched in anticipation. Our son David graduated summa cum laude from Yale Law and is now a partner in our firm. He's married to the lovely Patricia, and they've given us 2 beautiful grandchildren. David waved from his table near the front, his Harvard MBA wife Patricia smiling graciously. They were the golden couple of the Morrison family, successful, photogenic, productive. Everything I wasn't. And then there's our daughter Rachel. Dad's tone shifted almost imperceptibly, taking on the patient disappointment I'd heard my entire life. Rachel chose a different path. She studied art in college, which we supported despite our concerns about career prospects. Here it comes, I thought, taking a larger sip of champagne. After graduation, Rachel decided to pursue freelance graphic design. We hoped it was a phase, something she'd outgrow as she matured and realized the importance of stability and professional success. The crowd was listening politely, but I could see the subtle exchanges of glances, the raised eyebrows of people who remembered me as the promising young woman who'd somehow lost her way. Instead, Rachel has spent the past 10 years moving from job to job, project to project, never quite managing to establish herself in any meaningful way. Dad paused, his expression a mixture of regret and resignation. We love her, of course, but I'd be lying if I said we weren't disappointed. In a family of achievers, Rachel has proven to be, well, a waste of space. The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd endured years of subtle criticism, passive-aggressive comments about my career choices, and pointed questions about when I'd get a real job. But this was the first time he'd publicly branded me as worthless. A waste of space. The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel eyes turning toward me, see the pity and second-hand embarrassment on faces throughout the ballroom. My own father had just declared me a failure in front of 200 people at his anniversary celebration. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers and texted my assistant, "Cancel the mortgage payments. Effective immediately." The response came back within seconds. "All of them? Are you sure?" "All of them. And terminate the property insurance payments as well." Mom had started speaking now, thanking everyone for coming and sharing memories of their marriage, but her voice sounded distant and muffled. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear over the blood rushing in my ears. A waste of space. After everything I'd done for them, everything I'd sacrificed, everything I'd quietly fixed behind the scenes while they lived in blissful ignorance. "Rachel, dear," came a voice beside me. I turned to see Mrs. Pemberton, one of Mom's garden club friends, looking at me with the kind of sympathetic concern usually reserved for terminal patients. "Are you all right? You look pale." "I'm fine," I managed, though my voice sounded strange even to my own ears. "Your father didn't mean anything by that speech. You know how men are, they don't always express themselves well." "He expressed himself perfectly," I replied. Mrs. Pemberton's face scrunched with confusion, but before she could respond, the speeches concluded and the dancing began. The crowd dispersed and I found myself alone again, watching my parents accept congratulations and well wishes from their friends. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Dad went too far with that speech. You okay? I typed back, I'm fine. Enjoying the party. Another buzz. This time from my business partner Marcus. Saw the news coverage of your parents' anniversary. Looked lovely. How are you holding up? News coverage. Of course there was news coverage. The Morrison anniversary was exactly the kind of high society event that made the lifestyle pages of the Connecticut papers. I was about to respond when I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned to find Dad standing behind me, his expression sheepish. Rachel, honey, can we talk? What about? About what I said in the speech. I think it came out wrong. Did it? Because it sounded like you called me a waste of space in front of 200 people. Dad's face reddened. It wasn't supposed to sound like that. I was trying to be honest about our concerns, but I should have been more diplomatic. Diplomatic. You know what I mean. I could have phrased it better. I stared at him, this man who'd raised me, who'd paid for my education, who'd given me every advantage in life. And who'd just publicly humiliated me at his own anniversary party. Dad, do you actually think I'm a waste of space? He was quiet for a long moment, considering his words carefully. I think you're capable of so much more than you've achieved. That's not what I asked. Rachel, you're 31 years old. You live in a one-bedroom apartment, you drive a car that's older than your nephew, and you work on freelance projects that barely pay the bills. Your mother and I worry about your future constantly. My future. What happens when you get older? When you want to buy a house, start a family? How are you going to support yourself when freelance work dries up? The irony was overwhelming. Here was my father worried about my financial security, standing in a ballroom that I'd paid for, celebrating a marriage sustained by money I'd been providing for years. You really don't know, do you? I said quietly. Know what? Dad, who do you think has been paying your mortgage for the past 3 years? His face went blank. What are you talking about? Your mortgage. The one on the house in Greenwich. The payments that mysteriously started getting processed again after you fell behind in 2021. The bank worked out a payment plan with us. No, Dad. That was me. The color drained from his face. That's impossible. Is it? Who do you think paid for David's wedding when you couldn't afford the venue you'd promised Patricia? Who covered Mom's medical bills when her insurance denied the claim for her surgery? Who's been quietly handling the property taxes on the summer house in the Hamptons? Dad was staring at me like I'd started speaking in a foreign language. Rachel, how could I possibly afford to support your family when I'm such a waste of space? I don't understand. Morrison Creative isn't a freelance graphic design business, Dad. It's a creative agency with 47 employees and offices in New York, Los Angeles, and London. We did $23 million in revenue last year. The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. That's impossible, Dad repeated, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? You've never asked to see my portfolio, never inquired about my clients, never shown the slightest interest in what I actually do for a living. You decided 10 years ago that I was a failure, and you've never bothered to update that assessment. Mom appeared beside Dad, her face flushed from dancing. What are you two talking about so seriously? Rachel was just telling me about her business, Dad said weakly. Oh, that's nice, dear. Mom's voice carried the same patronizing tone she'd used to praise my finger paintings in elementary school. Are you getting more clients? Mom, I said carefully, what do you think I do for a living? You design things, sweetheart. Logos and websites and such. For whom? Mom looked confused by the question. I don't know. Small businesses, I suppose. I pulled out my phone and showed her the Morrison Creative website. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through our client list. Disney, Netflix, Apple, Tesla. She looked up at me with bewilderment. Rachel, what is this? It's my company, Mom. The one I've been running for 10 years while you and Dad assumed I was barely scraping by. Dad had gone very still. Rachel, if you own this company, if you're making this kind of money, why didn't you tell us? I tried to. Every family dinner, every holiday, every phone call. But you'd already decided what my life looked like, and nothing I said seemed to penetrate that narrative. But you live in that tiny apartment. Because I like it. It's in Soho, 2 blocks from my office, and it costs $3.2 million. Mom's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the marble floor. $3 million, she whispered. The mortgage you've been worried about, the one I've been paying? That's just one of 12 properties I own. The others include a house in the Hamptons, not the one you rent every summer, but the estate 3 houses down that you've always admired. Dad was leaning against the wall now, looking like he needed medical attention. The wedding venue for David's reception, I continued, the one you thought you'd gotten such a good deal on? I own that too. The photographer, the catering company, the florist, they're all clients of mine. I made sure David got the wedding he wanted. Why? Mom asked, tears streaming down her cheeks. Why would you do all this without telling us? Because I wanted you to be proud of me for who I am, not for how much money I have. Because I hoped that someday you'd look at my life and see success, even if it didn't match your definition. We are proud of you, Dad said desperately. Are you? Because 20 minutes ago you called me a waste of space in front of 200 people. The accusation hung between us like a sword. I didn't mean it, Dad whispered. Yes, you did. You meant every word. You've been thinking it for years, and tonight you finally said it out loud. David appeared at our little group, his face concerned. What's going on? Mom looks like she's seen a ghost. David, I said calmly, how much do you think I'm worth? What kind of question is that? Just answer it. How much money do you think your failure of a sister has? David looked uncomfortable. Rachel, I don't think about your finances. Guess. I don't know. Maybe 50,000? You live pretty simply. Try $47 million. David's mouth fell open. $47 million in liquid assets, plus another $89 million in business equity and real estate holdings. The small group that had gathered around us went silent. I could see other party guests beginning to notice the drama unfolding near the back wall. That's not possible, David said flatly. I handed him my phone, showing him my portfolio dashboard. His face went through the same cycle of confusion, disbelief, and horror that Dad's had. Jesus Christ, Rachel. How long have you been rich? About 7 years. Successful? About 9 years. But you've all been so convinced I was failing that you never noticed I was succeeding. Patricia had joined our group now, along with several family friends who'd been drawn by the commotion. What's happening? Patricia asked. We're discovering that Rachel isn't who we thought she was, Mom said, her voice hollow. Mrs. Pemberton, who'd been listening with growing amazement, spoke up. Rachel dear, if you're so successful, why do you dress so simply? I looked down at my black dress, understated, elegant, and worth more than Mrs. Pemberton's car. Because I don't need clothes to validate my worth. But your apartment, your car. I like my apartment. It's beautiful and convenient. And my car runs perfectly. Why would I replace something that works? The mortgage payments, Dad said suddenly, as if remembering where this conversation had started. You said you canceled them. I texted my assistant 20 minutes ago. As of tonight, you're responsible for your own housing costs. But we can't afford. Then you'll need to figure something out. Sell the house, downsize, ask David for help. I'm sure the family achiever can handle it. The cruelty in my voice surprised even me, but I was past caring about being nice. Rachel, you can't just cut us off, David said. Mom and Dad are depending on that help. Are they? Because as of tonight, they think I'm a waste of space. Why would you want help from someone like that? The ballroom had gone quiet around us. Other guests were openly staring now, sensing drama but not understanding its scope. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, raising my voice so everyone could hear. I'd like to thank you all for celebrating my parents' anniversary tonight. I'm Rachel Morrison, the waste of space you heard about in the speech. A murmur of discomfort rippled through the crowd. I'm also the founder and CEO of Morrison Creative, the agency that designed the marketing campaigns for half the brands you use every day. We're responsible for the Disney Plus launch campaign, the Tesla Cybertruck reveal, and the Netflix rebrand you've been seeing everywhere. The murmur grew louder, confused. I'm worth approximately $136 million. I own 12 properties across 3 states, and I've been quietly supporting my parents' lifestyle for the past 3 years while they complained about my lack of success. The ballroom erupted in shocked conversation. But as of tonight, that support ends. My parents prefer to have me as a disappointment rather than as a daughter, so I'm giving them what they want. I turned to Mom and Dad, who were staring at me with expressions of pure horror. You'll have 90 days to make alternative arrangements for the mortgage, property taxes, and insurance. After that, you're on your own. Rachel, please, Mom whispered. We can work this out. Can we? Because the speech tonight wasn't an accident, Mom. It was the culmination of 31 years of disappointment in me. I'm tired of being the family failure, so I'm resigning from the position. I kissed both their cheeks gently, the way I had as a child after bedtime stories. Happy anniversary. I hope the rest of your marriage is everything you deserve. As I walked through the ballroom toward the exit, conversations stopped in my wake. I could hear whispers, fragments of shocked discussion, the sound of a family's reputation rearranging itself in real time. My phone was buzzing constantly, texts from David, calls from Mom, voicemails from Dad. I turned it off and drove home to my $3.2 million tiny apartment, where I poured myself a glass of wine that cost more than my parents thought I made in a month. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent 10 years building an empire while my family saw only failure. I'd supported their lifestyle while they worried about my future. I'd succeeded beyond their wildest dreams while they planned interventions to save me from myself. But tonight, for the first time in my adult life, I'd told them exactly who I was. A waste of space. Worth $136 million. The morning brought consequences. David called at 7 a.m., his voice tight with panic. Rachel, we need to talk. Mom and Dad are in crisis mode. The mortgage payment is due next week and they don't have the money. That sounds like a problem for the family achievers to solve. Don't be like this. You can't just abandon them. I'm not abandoning them, David. I'm treating them exactly the way they've been treating me. By withholding financial support? By respecting their assessment of my capabilities. If I'm a waste of space, I clearly can't be trusted with important financial decisions. That's not what Dad meant, and you know it. Is it? Because he seemed pretty clear about my value to the family. David was quiet for a moment. How long have you been supporting them? Financially? 3 years. Emotionally? Never. I had no idea. None of you did. You were all too busy being disappointed in me to notice I was taking care of you. What do you want from us, Rachel? I want you to see me. Really see me. Not the daughter you wished I was, not the sister you think I should be, but the woman I actually am. We're seeing you now. Are you? Or are you just seeing the money? The question hung between us like a bridge neither of us was sure we could cross. Both, David admitted quietly. I'm seeing both. It was the first honest thing anyone in my family had said to me in years. Then maybe there's hope for us after all. What about Mom and Dad? They'll figure it out. They're intelligent, resourceful people. They just need to learn to solve their own problems instead of depending on their waste of space daughter. Rachel. I love them, David. I love all of you. But I'm done being invisible while paying for your lives. The conversation ended with David promising to talk to our parents about finding a way forward that didn't involve taking me for granted. 3 months later, Mom and Dad downsized to a smaller house they could actually afford. Dad took on more cases at the firm, Mom started consulting for other nonprofits, and they learned to live within their means. They also learned to ask about my work with genuine curiosity instead of thinly veiled concern. Tell us about the Netflix project, Mom said over dinner at my apartment, the first time they'd visited my home in years. How did you get that contract? It was a real question asked with real interest. For the first time in 31 years, I felt like they were talking to me instead of at me. It started with a cold email. I began and watched my parents listen to my story with the attention they'd never given it before. Family relationships, it turned out, required more than love. They required respect. And sometimes, you had to demand that respect by showing what life looked like without it. 6 months later, Dad called to ask my advice about a client's marketing needs. Not because he felt obligated to include me, but because he'd finally understood that his waste of space daughter was actually an expert in her field. Mom started introducing me at social events as my daughter Rachel, who owns Morrison Creative. No qualifiers, no explanations, no apologies. And David asked me to design the marketing materials for his run for district attorney. I want the best, he told me. And apparently the best is my sister. Apparently,